Yes. Yes. Right, good afternoon everyone. Thank you all very much for coming this morning to the joint overview of Scrutiny Committee's Mayoral Q&A. Before we start, I'd just like to do some useful reminders. Could we all please remember to use our microphones? The meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. So we will all obviously be YouTube sensations by the end of this meeting. Mobile phones, please switch to silent. And just to remind everyone that the Q&A has been scheduled for 2.5 hours. So that's up until 4. So as I say, welcome everyone. Appreciate the Mayor coming and spending 2.5 hours with us to take us through the draft budget for 25-26. And in a second, I will ask him to make an opening statement and to take questions from members of both scrutiny committees over the next 2.5 hours. I'd also like to remind everyone that today is Holocaust Memorial Day. I know there's been a service this morning that many members actually did attend, and it's very important that the victims of the Holocaust, we should remember them, so that never again will we face such a horrific event. Okay, with that, I'll go to item 2 and apologies, and I believe Jana will provide the apologies.
So we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Liz Clements from Birmingham City Council and Councillor Anthony Tucker from Coventry City Council.
Thank you very much, Jana. Do any members present have any declarations of interest they would like to make known at this moment? No, in which case I will then go rapidly on to the Mayor's opening statement, which I believe will take approximately 5 minutes, outlining the Mayor's key objectives for the upcoming year's budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Huxtable. So, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Today's an important opportunity for me, in fact, all of us, to discuss the draft budget for the financial year 2025-26. As you will know, after I got elected, I inherited a difficult financial position. Promises were made by the previous government and the previous mayor that didn't actually deliver the funding in the packages that had been previously promised. And I had to deal with some very important issues addressing underfunding of transport projects. Indeed, that led to me launching an independent review of transport projects. There were previous promises by the previous government, around £250 million for bus funding, that were in no central government budget, whether it be DFT or the Treasury, and we had to work very hard during the autumn budget process to secure funding to keep our buses and the bus network working for the next 2 financial years, or the current financial year and next one, as a result of the failure of the previous government to build its commitments into budget statements or budget commitments for the DFT and the Treasury. And I've had to undertake a significant review of the way we fund and deliver housing projects across the region to ensure that every pound we spent is being spent on the best purposes. And I've had to engage in conversations with the Deputy Prime Minister to ensure we don't lose around £150 million worth of housing budget that had a very tight deadline in terms of using it by the end of this calendar year, and had a series of obligations placed on it around levels of grant funding per unit that were simply not deliverable from this region. So we've addressed those challenges, and we're moving on now to focus on my key priorities around growth, on journeys, on housing and jobs. And in terms of economic growth, I'm delighted that we made real progress around our investment zones. We've got 3 in the region, And the one that's leading the charge is the Giga Park in the southeast of the region, in Coventry, bordering with Warwick District Council. And we're going to help those three investment zones, including the one that's leading the charge in Coventry, will deliver around £5 billion worth of investment into this region and create 30,000 jobs. And my prize to ensure that those jobs go to people living, learning and training in the West Midlands today. We've also, during the course of the next financial year, we'll see us receive the integrated settlement, which will give us a lot more flexibility on how we use government funding and the streams of funding. And we're working very closely with each of the Met councils to ensure that that funding is allocated to areas that will yield and deliver the biggest benefit to the people that live here. On my journeys agenda, as you all know, we've made some good progress towards a new approach to operating the buses and a franchising system. And there's currently a consultation out with members of the public currently. And I'm very hopeful that we'll get the support we need and we can improve the bus network and improve the lives of everyone in this region by having a bus network that works for everyone. And on the jobs agenda, we're continuing to deliver on my West Midlands Youth Plan, creating opportunities and training opportunities, particularly for our young people that have suffered so badly under the previous government. I'm delighted that every council leader across the region and every borough of the region has made tackling youth unemployment their number one priority. And that is very much aligned with the commitments and the pledges I've made around my youth plan and reducing unemployment and opening up opportunities for everyone across this region. Crucially, this week sees the launch of my task forces, and I'm attending the first one after this meeting on growth. And that's a vital step to ensuring, as mayor and the team around me, we get expertise and insight from business professionals and sector experts that will help us deliver growth and build on the progress we've made over the last 9 months. There's a lot of work to do. We're still fixing the foundations and the legacy that I inherited, but we're making good progress. We've got a fantastic relationship with the new government. We're really working them closely in the run-up to the spending review. And once that spending review is announced in June, I'm hoping we'll have good news and more good news to share with you. Thank you very much, Councillor Huxtable.
Thank you very much for your opening statement. I'm now going to open up the questions from members of the committee. I propose that the first two sections are the mayoral precept and the mayoral manifesto. So question number one under the mayoral precept is Councillor Andrew Bullock.
Thank you. This question was largely debated at the OSC committee, and there is no mayoral precept for this year. We just wanted your view really on, is that a sustainable position, or do you see that having to change as we go into the future?
Thank you, Councillor Burrow. I was very clear in my manifesto that I had no intention of introducing a mayoral precept. It's pretty clear, and you will have had a briefing on the budget statements, not just next year, but the medium term, that the combined authority's expenditure is going to be greater than its forecast income, running from 26-27 to 29-30. And that's largely because of, in my view, some poor decisions made historically, particularly around the transport levy. And over that period of time, the last 10 years, Manchester's transport levy has increased by almost double ours, and that's left us with some issues to address. I've worked really closely with the new government during the budget to ensure that we've got some additional funds that will stabilise our bus network going forward, and that's a particular priority for me, which is fabric to ensuring that in the short term we have a budget and a financial plan that is viable. Now, we've got some longer term decision to make on sustainability of our transport system. I'm working with officers here. We've increased the levy this year with agreement of leaders, and that will be approved very, very soon. And we're working with the government, and I met indeed with the new Secretary of State for Transport just 2 weeks ago to discuss the issues we face around transport fund, in particular our buses. It's a position that is shared by many other mayors, and I'm hoping that we resolve the issues we have on a funding gap, particularly around transport, by working with our council leaders and the government. And at this stage, I've been pretty clear that I've got no intention of levying a precept on the constituents of the West Midlands.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, I'm then going to go on to the Mayoral manifesto. And there's 3 questions on market stall, banking, clubs and homes for good. I believe Councillor Cathy Baton is going to ask all of them.
So apologies. I think you'd better be listening to me. Just one thing on your opening statement, Richard, if I could just get some clarity on it. So you talked about you'd had to have conversations about a grant fund for housing that we knew we wouldn't spend. Has that been extended now? Has the time frame been extended on which to spend that in?
So thank you, Cathy. So yeah, I was really clear when I arrived that it would have been, in my view, a dereliction of my duty and responsibility if the funds that were due to expire at the end of this year were to run out without being used, given the fact that we've got 22,000 people living across this region, living in temporary accommodation. That includes 13,000 children that are having their lives and their futures blighted because they can't get access to warm, safe and secure and affordable housing. So I made it pretty clear that I would need to work with the government to get some additional flexibilities, both on extension of the time frame in which we could use those funds, and also I was very clear I wanted to use them for very different purposes than my predecessor, with a big focus on social homes. And that flexibility was always there, but my predecessor didn't want to secure it. Indeed, he only delivered 46 units of social housing during his 2 terms in office. Unfortunately, some might say fortunately, a general election was called within 2 weeks of my election, so that correspondence was held back. And immediately after the general election, I wrote to the Deputy Prime Minister asking for the freedoms and flexibilities around both the dates at which we could use the funds, and for further flexibilities that would allow me to deliver up to an additional 2,000 units of social housing within some of the funds I wanted to use for that purpose. I'm pleased to say that those conversations have been progressing very well. Business cases being developed and approved. I spoke to the Deputy Prime Minister last week at a Mayoral Way Day with her, and I'm hoping the conversations are very positive. I'm hoping that within a matter of weeks rather than months, I'll be able to make a public statement about the progress we've made. But the government is very supportive. It understands our needs. It's focused on addressing child poverty, getting families out of temporary accommodation, which will also relieve our local authorities of enormous financial burden. And I'm very pleased, Cathy, that those conversations have been very positive, and it demonstrates what a Labour mayor working with Labour government can achieve in a region like this.
Thanks for that, Richard, and obviously we all hope that that those conversations come to fruition and the timeframes are extended, because, as you say, it would be absolutely criminal monies to have to be sent back to government. So I've got some questions on your Mayoral manifesto pledges. The first one's around market stalls, because you made a really clear manifesto pledge around funding market stalls. It was part of the revitalising high streets and bringing pride back in towns. Is this pledge budgeted for within this year's budget? I know Dudley have benefited previously for some marketplace revamp money, and that's come through the UK SPF money. So is that pledge budgeted, and how much do you expect to be spending on activities?
Thank you. So there are some funds in the budget, and I'm currently working through with officers the extent to which we can segregate those out from some existing priorities. So I can't be absolutely clear on a number at this point in time. But what I can say is the needs of local businesses, small traders, it remains a priority for me. When I was campaigning, we were running focus groups. The three biggest issues that are on the radar of people in this region were cost of living crisis, the health service, and the state of our high streets. And that's because for too many people across this region, the visual decline of the high streets was a very visual statement for them about the decline of the places. So we're currently working through the funds that we might have available. I'm also discussing with officers the way in which funds that may be available in the future, particularly arising from the way in which we can yield the benefits of treasury management here, could be used to create funds explicitly dedicated to supporting the high streets in the future. So that work is, those conversations ongoing. But I think there's two things that I also want to say to you which are important. Under the single settlement, councils will be looking at ways in which they use their budgets to support local places, and I expect our councils, in each case all of them, to be looking at ways that they can use those funds that will be devolved to them to support their own high streets. I have been working, many of you know that I've been meeting regularly with business improvement districts across the region, and have been encouraging them to share their expertise and understanding they have of how to regenerate high streets with parts of the region that don't currently benefit from having business improvement districts. And I'll be continuing to work across another range of packages of regeneration funds, including the future use of brownfield funds, to look at what we can do, not just to help businesses relocate or to create opportunities for business investment and housing, but also the extent that we can use some of those funds to support our high streets too. So those conversations are in progress, and I'm hoping that over the next few weeks we'll be able to earmark some specific funds that we can help and dedicate to the regeneration of our high streets, because too many of them, frankly, have been in decline now for too long.
Before you ask your next question, Councillor Leighton, I think Councillor Tennant wanted to ask, was it on what the Mayor just outlined in about?
Just coming off a particular point about working with councils he talked about.
Right, okay, if you'd like to ask your question then please.
So yeah, so in your answer there, you talked about closer working with councils and devolving money down to them. Those who've had the joys of sharing this committee with me for the last 2 years have known that's an area I've been concerned about. So how are you ensuring that you are working closer with the councils? That hasn't always happened, so the money isn't being wasted by both combined authority and councils doing the same thing. We saw in economic development, and we've seen skills as well.
Thank you, Jamie. So I have a very different approach to my predecessor at how I work with local authorities. From the outset, I've always said it's about collaboration and it's getting maximum leverage from the resources that we use. So we meet at least once a month, myself and all the council leaders, discussing some of the biggest priorities we have for this region. And that is largely about the way in which we can work to deliver to best effect for all of our residents. And it was from those discussions that the issue of youth unemployment was discussed, and every council leader has made that a priority. The work on the ground then is how to ensure that the work being done strategically, from this place with our councils, is best aligned as possible. And in regard to that, we're developing some work on public service innovation, being led by the Chief Executive of Walsall, and that is looking at how councils, the combined authority and the DWP can work more effectively on the ground at a very local level to focus and align our resources in the best way, in that case, to address issues around youth unemployment. So that's happening on the ground. Also, you may have read about some of the changes we're making to some of the economic architecture in the region, including to the West Midlands Growth Company. That is about ensuring that the West Midlands Growth Company is, and it will be, on a sustainable footing, but it's also about how do we ensure the work of the Growth Company, the work of the team here, and officers here, and the work of council officers is best aligned to deliver and shape growth. So, like you, I'm really, really keen that every pound of public money is used to best effect. I'm also really keen that the best part of, if you like, the ecosystem is delivering it on the ground, so whether it's from here, whether it's at councils or other bodies. So that's the other bit for me, is making sure that not only we're using money in the best way, but it's being delivered most effectively. And that is the work that we're seeking to do now. And I think it's been well received, and the feedback I've had has been very positive. The other piece of work that I'm really clear, and I discussed it with the Chief Financial Secretary to the Treasury last Friday in a meeting, and discussing it with leaders and the team here, is that we need to deliver more quickly. It often takes too long to mobilise government funds. So whether it's the relationship the Combined Authority has with the Treasury, or the relationship Combined Authority has with councils in terms of delivering spending and agreeing it and approving it, I want those processes streamlined, because frankly, too often it's taking too long to mobilise and release and use some of the funds. And if we can speed up that process, remove bureaucracy, we can deliver more effectively and quickly, and deliver more for the people of West Midlands. Thank you.
I think Councillor Locke also wanted to come in.
I just wanted to ask as well, you say you're working with the leaders of local councils, all the people on the ground to all us councillors as well. We're invaluable. We know our patches as well, and we know where regeneration and high streets need work.
Thank you, Mary. You're absolutely right. And I am, just to reassure councillors that on a rotational basis, I visit every council for visits and meetings, and I'm meeting councillors for Q&A sessions. And for any of you, I would say just liaise with your leaders' offices about those visits. Trying to use those visits to not just have discussions with leaders about their priorities, but with all their councillors, and to get out into their communities. And in terms of that commitment on the ground, you are the people that understand your places best. We don't from this place, we cannot. There have been a number of interventions we've taken once we've had approaches from councillors on the ground, but also in terms of my commitment of making the Combined Authority more accessible to people, and ensuring that this place is in contact with our communities. The future rounds going forward of the private leaders meetings I have outside the board meetings will be taking place in our communities, our community centres, in voluntary organisations, on business premise. So I'm very keen that beyond the formal board meetings, we hold those meetings out in our communities, demonstrating what we do here has relevance and resonance to all of our places.
Thank you. So, your next question, Councillor Baker.
Thank you. So, I'm anticipating it'll be a similar response actually to the market store one, but again, in your manifesto, you talked about banking hubs. And if you can explain, please, where you are with the rollout of these, and how they're being, or how they're going to be funded in the future, how they will physically look to people.
Thank you, Kathy. A really good point. So this is very much aligned to my previous answer about how do we ensure that our high streets support our communities and retain the key services that our communities need, and actually in many cases can actually be those banking hubs can be the draw that attracts retail and further footfall. So I'm really pleased that the government nationally have made a pledge to supporting banking hubs across our communities and across our regions. And that's really important for me because government has a few more levers than I do and access potentially some more funding. So we are currently working with MHCLG and others on better understanding the government's programme for rollout, and we will be continue to work with the government to look at ways we can benefit from the support they've got. So at this stage, there's no commitment to using Combined Authority resources to support that manifesto pledge of mine, but we are working with the government on delivery. And I'm hoping that by the time we meet again, I'll not only just be able to update you on the progress, but we'll have some very clear plans in place around the delivery of banking hubs on our high streets.
Before I call you in for your third question, Councillor Layton, my apologies to Councillor Mackey. I didn't see you raise your hand because I think you had a question just going back to the mayoral precept.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tim, and thanks very much for taking the question. Yeah, in your answer on the precept, very eloquent answer. There's quite a lot of talk about transport levy, but not so much on the precept. I thought if I phrase the question the other way, it might be easier. Sort of, can the residents of Birmingham and Sutton Coldfield, will they see a mayoral precept in sort of 2026?
There won't be a mayoral precept next year. We're beyond that now, and just to reassure you, I'm keen, I believe people pay enough taxes in this region and nationally, and we are working with officers here, civil servants and the Secretary of State, the same position as many other mayors, of looking at how we can deliver the bus network that we need to in this region, particularly, and we can do that without needing to draw on a mayoral precept. So to be really, really clear, in 2025-26, in the budget, the draft budget that's been put forward, there is no mayoral precept. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bates.
Actually, I was actually asking for the following year, for 26.
Sorry, I thought you said 26, you mean 26-27?
Yeah.
I'll repeat what I said before. At this point in time, there is no plan for me to raise a precept. We will be having and we continue to have discussions with the government. They'll continue pre and post spending room to ensure that we can address the gap in the medium to long term budget around transport. As I said before, that has largely arisen because of the neglect of the previous leaders and the fact that they haven't wished to increase the levy. It's left us with a gap to fill, and we are looking at every way of resolving that gap. And certainly, my plan is that that gets resolved without the need for me to raise a precept. Thank you.
Okay, and now Councillor Layton and your third question.
And I'll be quiet. So homes for good. And you talked, and we would all absolutely agree that a good, safe, warm home should be everybody's right. But in terms of funding a large retrofit project, you can't do that. Public sector can't do that without the assistance of private interventions. So what part of it, what proportion do you anticipate being funded through the combined authority? And what do you anticipate being funded through private sector, and what work is currently underway to start leveraging the investment from private sector that we need in the region?
Thank you, Kathy. I'm really pleased that the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero have allocated this region for next year after some lobbying from this place and the demonstration about the difference investment in our homes can make to the people in this region. So we built that case up in the run up to the budget, and I'm really pleased that we've secured another £137 million from the government to support investment in retrofit and remediation. And there'll be some further statements on that later this week. And it costs, in general terms, around £15,000 to £20,000 per property to retrofit homes to make them warm and safe and secure. The benefits of those programmes don't just accrue to the people that were living in those homes, but we're creating jobs. Many businesses benefit from the spending we make, and there's a general rule of thumb about that wider benefit being around 2.5 times the public sector investment. So that public sector investment will deliver close to £500 million of the benefits for our wider communities across the West Midlands. The point you raise on private finance, so currently the schemes we're developing are being developed from the combined authority, working with our council partners. I can't give you an answer on what the private sector are doing. It's a very, very good question. But at this point in time, the package of spending our programme investment is being delivered by the combined authority and with with and for our council partners. So I can't give you an answer, but I will ask the officers here to assess, what leverage we may be yielding from the private sector as part of that programme.
I think Councillor Kay had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Mayor, are you tailoring your expectations for future government spending based on the falling value of the pound, the rising interest rates and the do-it-yourself recession being created by the current government? Thank you.
We're basing our plans on a very positive and constructive relationship with the government and commitment the government's made towards growth, ensuring our public services are well funded, and certainly rebuilding the foundations of not both our regional economy but our national economy that was neglected so long by the previous government. Thank you.
Yeah, on this point.
Yes.
Chair, thank you very much. I'm sorry I was late. Today's a day of Holocaust, which we remember in Coventry City Council, because due to change of the dates, I never missed that event, but today I had to miss it because of this not very well organized day for question and answer as far as mayors is concerned, and I thought this is an important meeting and I didn't want to miss it. Now, Mayor, sir, please, it took 14 years of this Tory government dismantling bit by bit everything in our country. How long you reckon it will take us, this government and you, put us back right into a place when 2010?
Thank you. We are doing our hardest to rebuild the foundations of our economy, our infrastructure and our communities that were so badly savaged by, I think, the dereliction responsibility and duty of the previous government. I'm really pleased to say, I'm working with all our council leaders across the region. I emphasise all of them and the officers here to ensure we secure the maximum funding for our infrastructure, our services from the current government, so we can deliver for the people of West Midlands. And if we do that really well, working collectively and collaboratively, we can repair that damage within the time frame that will benefit everyone in this region. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, just on that point, if we go back to 2010, then if I'm correct, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr Mayor, is that we wouldn't have the extensions of the metro from Birmingham Snow Hill to West Side. We wouldn't have the metro under extension currently to East Side. We wouldn't have the metro currently under construction from Wednesbury to Dudley. We wouldn't have under construction the reopening of the Wolverhampton to Warsaw Line and the stations of Darlaston and Windhall. And we wouldn't have the construction of the new Camp Hill line of stations at Pineapple Road, Moseley Village and King's Heath, because all that funding and all that construction has come since 2010. Am I right?
You are right that we've secured a level of funding that's helped us improve our infrastructure and help people get around this region. But this region has now not seen economic growth for 8 years. We've got a level of productivity that is lower than the national average by almost 30%. And in the last 4 years, our relative productivity to Greater Manchester, the region most like ours, is declined by 20%. We've got a region where a quarter of the workforce has no skills or low skills, meaning that a quarter of the people in work in this region are in the lowest paid jobs. And we've got twice as many young people out of work than the national average. That's the damage I'm repairing. That's the issues we're addressing, and focusing on those issues is the difference we're going to make to people in this region. We've got 13,000 children in this region living in poverty, in poor quality, low cost, insecure temporary accommodation. The neglect of social housing over the last 15 years since the previous Conservative was elected is shocking and damning, and we're addressing those issues with a real focus on them now. There's been a neglect of funding and investment in public transport, particularly the buses. 80% of members of the public who use public transport in this region use the bus network, and it's lacked investment for more than 15 years. More than that, I applaud the benefits of the investment in the metro, but over the last 28 years, all we've built each year on average is half a mile of metro track. In that period of time, the average person would have walked between the North Pole and the South Pole and halfway back again. That's the progress we've made on metros. And that issue has stopped this region succeeding. We need to get people back into work, into highly skilled jobs, grow our economy, invest in social housing, improve the lives of everyone in this region. And we'll do that under a Labour government and Labour mayor. Thank you, Councillor Huxtable.
Thank you. Right, if we then, in terms of homes for everyone, Councillor Burrow was going to ask a question about net zero, but I believe that's been answered already, Councillor Burrow. So there was a question on brownfield remediation. Would you like to answer that?
Thank you. I mean, I do welcome the move towards social housing. I mean, my own ward, I'm in the unusual situation of actually supporting a planning application on the Greenbelt because it's going to provide 37 almshouses at social rent. So where I am that is a good use of Greenbelt. In terms of brownfield remuneration, you've talked about building more homes for rent. Have you any idea how many you can produce over the next year? And what proportion of those would be affordable versus social rent? Do you actually have some figures on that?
We are currently, just to give you some background, so I inherited a position of commitments to housing projects and development projects and underwriting of developments that I was not at all happy with in terms of some of those commitments were long-standing without any development on site. And there was an underwriting of projects, particularly by some developers that didn't necessarily need underwriting. So officers have been reviewing a pipeline of projects to clear it out and understand them better, and in many cases reduce the subsidy that they need from this place. And so that's a work in progress. As we start to develop and firm up those plans, I will have a better understanding of the additional funds we've got to spend, and that's what we're doing currently. And some of those projects and those conversations are having bilaterally with some of the sponsors of those projects, so I can't reveal them now. But I'm expecting us to be able to identify and generate some additional sums that we can direct towards affordable social housing. The other issue we deal with, which we're working on, is that, of course, many of the planning permissions that support those developments are given by local authorities, quite rightly, and there is often an affordable social housing commitment to them. And we'll continue to meet those obligations that typically range from between 10 and 15 or 20% of those developments. That's where we are now. What have I done since I got elected? Firstly, I was profoundly concerned that there was up to about £150 million worth of funds allocated by the previous government that we could no longer use effectively here. And that was because the level of grants that the government wanted us to allocate for a new unit of housing or a home was insufficient to encourage or support development. And that's why, as I referenced when I started, the conversations we're having with Angela Rayner about the freedoms of those resources. And I want to ensure that the housing funds available to me at the Combined Authority are not used to help private sector developments become more viable. A target is delivering a far higher number of affordable and social housing. And I've been really, really clear that my priority is on social housing. The most subsidised part of the affordable housing sort of spectrum, if you like, in terms of tenures. And that's because, as I said, we've got 20,000 people, 6,500 families and 13,000 children living in poor quality temporary accommodation. And I don't want to see any family living in that way. And that's why I've made such a commitment to remain focused on social housing until those families are housed appropriately. For the work we're doing already, excuse me if I just go for a figure, by changing that focus towards social housing, so my predecessor delivered during his 2 tenures 46 units of social housing. We've already delivered in 9 months 350, and there's another 300 coming on stream, which we announce very soon. Beyond that, if I get the freedoms that I expect for the Deputy Prime Minister, working with some housing associations, I expect to be able to support the building of another 1,500 units of social housing, taking in total around 5,000 children out of poverty and temporary accommodation. That's the focus, and that's where we're aiming for. I will be able to give you an updated figure on the plans going ahead once we work through the current strategy, and I've identified how much of the funds currently allocated to developments in a pipeline that won't be built out. Once those are freed up, I'll be able to give you an exact figure. But be under no doubt, my focus is on social housing, ensuring that we maximise the number of social housing and units of social housing on every development, and we're making good progress. I'm working with a number of social housing landlords, housing associations in the region. My current conversations, I'm working with them, and this is part of the business case that's gone to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Treasury. If I work with those housing associations on their existing developments, that gives me this pipeline of projects for social housing. That's my commitment. So I will be updating you further on exact numbers. They are in part dependent on two things: successful conclusion of negotiations with the Deputy Prime Minister and freeing up additional resources from private sector developments where they don't require the level of subsidy that's been previously allocated to them.
Thank you.
Councillor Mackie.
Yeah, thanks very much, and congratulations on those 350 social homes that you've delivered. But I just want to ask, I mean, from someone who's got a construction industry background, are you saying that you acquired the land, got the planning permission, got the houses built, and handed over 350 homes in 9 months? Is that what you're saying?
Not at all. What I'm saying is that we've used our subsidy to support existing developments which have allowed homes that would have previously been affordable or private for sale, privately rented, to convert into social housing. That's what happens when you have a Labour mayor focusing on social housing, targeting the resources here to helping people get out of poor quality accommodation. It is all about tenure. It's about investing in social housing, allow homes built for different purposes to change tenure. We can do that overnight when you've got a commitment and make social housing a priority.
Sorry, you're very eloquently speaking. It's just me who's not keeping up. These 350 homes, they weren't going to be social housing before, and you've turned them into social housing. Is that what you're saying?
Some were, but the majority weren't. And that's the way we're working, and that's the best way of working in the short term to create social homes. If we waited for development to start with the plan, we would have been exactly where my predecessor was by not giving enough focus to this type of tenure. So exactly right. That's what we're doing, making social housing a focus, using resources to invest in social housing, allowing current developments to maximise the number of units they're developing for social housing, providing the resources are needed to do so. It's as easy, as straightforward, and as quick as that. And that's what happens when you make social housing a priority and not something that is not given enough attention. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up on this particular section. Oh, Councillor Ward.
Thank you. Sorry, just because we are on housing, it's a question I would have asked. Mayor, you talked a bit about the substandard accommodation in the region. And as you'll know from previous conversations we've had, one of the big issues in the region is the growth of exempt accommodation has been. So as mayor of the region, would you be willing to write to the government asking them to bring exempt accommodation into the planning system so that it needs planning going forward, so councils have the ability to control the growth of it? Thank you.
I certainly would, and I know what a blight check that is. Accommodation is on our communities, and indeed my programme around delivering social housing is aiming to help as many of those families living that type of accommodation, and other types of temporary accommodation to relieve them of, often the high rents and the poor quality insecure accommodation they've got to move them into social housing. And I'm very happy to work with you and other councillors at Birmingham to that effect. Thank you.
So if there's no other questions on the housing section, I'd like to move, and I just changed the agenda slightly because most of the questions that I left are to do with transport, and move on to the transport section. We haven't got allocated questions about this, so I'm going to start off, and then I'm sure members of my committee will chip in from all sides. You mentioned earlier about the need to build metro. I'm assuming build more rail stations that are open to the public so we can provide journeys for everyone. So if we exclude everything under construction at the moment, how much money, new money, will be allocated, and what will success look like? Like how many miles of new metro lines not currently under construction, of new rail lines not currently open for passenger use, and new sprint routes not currently being installed on our road network, will there be by the end of your narrative? Thank you.
So we are currently, as you know, in the back end of our current regional transport funding, and our priority to date has been how we use those current tranches of funding and already meet commitments that have been made. And I believe you've been updated with some information on the status of that current programme and the over programming. That is our current priority. We are not yet in a position of having the figures which will run through the numbers to support investment in transport through the next spending review period. Those announcements were made in the summer, and we are currently working on submissions to government around those priority projects, and those conversations are live and taking place. And once we're through the spending review, we will have a better idea and a firm idea about those future commitments that will take us forward.
Okay, let's go back to Sprint, because you talked about bus, and Sprint is after all bus rapid transit. Where are we in terms of new Sprint routes? We're currently looking at cross-city bus proposals in Birmingham, and some have gone out to consultation. But where are we in terms of Sprint, and what do you see as the priority Sprint routes going forward, funding permitting?
So over the near term, when I inherited what was a very precarious situation in terms of future funding commitments and the over programming, which my view was excessive given the level of inflation in the construction industry. So we had to make a commitment, I think you referred to already, to focusing on those projects in delivery, and some projects that were not in development had to be deferred. But over the near term, the priorities will be the A45 Birmingham Coventry Road. The work has started, it's progressing, and over the next 2 years that project will be completed. There's a priority in Solihull, the B425 Load Lane Hobbsmoat Road. Work is underway currently, I understand, to install new bus shelters, drainage and road widening. There's further work around the Solihull Jaguar Land Rover plant, and the A34 from Birmingham through to Sandwell is a priority, and there's also really some work going on around utility diversions around Solihull Station. As we go forward, and we're starting to reprogram the list of projects running into the next CRSDS programme 2, there will be a new set of priority Sprint projects, and those will be taken to board at the right time once further development work should be undertaken. So, like you, I recognise the importance of Sprint, and indeed, once we've progressed, and I'm hoping that we'll have a franchise bus system, the Sprint system, and freeing up our highways so buses can get people across the region more quickly is going to be fabric to our approach going forward. And I see Sprint as being an essential part of that renewed and re-engineered network.
I look forward to scrutinising the reprogramming in due course. But
And I look forward to your scrutiny.
excellent. Because you mentioned bus franchising. So one of the questions that we came up at Transport Delivery ONS was, how will you finance the move to franchising, with particular reference to buying bus depots? And how dependent would a successful bus franchising model be on TfWM owning bus depots across the region? And what ongoing revenue implications of owning bus depots would there be on the transport levy, which you've already mentioned is right? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. So there are a few questions there, but don't answer all of them in one go. Please come back. So a number of sections that are important.
Oh, I will.
So and I will too. So just on this, so on the future of our bus depots is fabric to supporting our bus network, whether or not we have a franchising system or not. Sadly, previous governments under previous legislation had recklessly sold those very important public assets. So absolutely fabric to an effective bus networking system. So there is a bus depot acquisition plan that's been taken to board, supported by board, and that is in process. And negotiations are now taking place over the acquisition of specific depots, up to 10, I believe, that are needed to support our bus network, interestingly, irrespective of not we are franchising a lot. So that work is in progress. Some of those negotiations are confidential, but it's absolutely the right thing to do. And I'm hoping that in the future, those depots will not just support our buses, but when we have electric buses, as we're going to have in Coventry, across the whole network in Coventry very, very soon, that those depots will support EV charging of heavy vehicles owned by councils and commercial businesses, and will be increasingly attractive venues for that type of activity. The acquisition of the bus depots and the approach taken will be exactly the same as under the other franchise system. You acquire the depot through capital borrowing, and under a franchise system, you lease those depots back to operators, and the net cost to this place, to Transport West Midlands Local Body Authority, is zero, and that it's really the way you deal with the financing charge, and that is how it works. And I hope all of those in your room who recognise the importance of our bus network to the effectiveness of our region and mobility, and indeed social mobility, will understand the importance of depots to supporting that network, and will recognise that the approach we're taking is not just the right one, it offers best value for money, and it will help ensure we secure a sustainable bus network across the region for the long term. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Akhtar had a question.
Chair, when your question finished, then I will ask.
I think my question was
Okay,
finished.
thank you. Thank you, Chair. Mayor, please, as politician, there is a terrible deficit of trust regarding the public, because they always accuse us that we never deliver on our promises. And I'm so glad, sir, when it comes to franchising, that you are going through the process with the full blazing way. And so, I mean, last year we paid £50 million, otherwise we would have lost 1/3 of the network. I think officers will confirm that. That was the ultimatum from the operators. And we had to cough up that 50 million taxpayers' money. And the network wasn't increased. There wasn't more frequencies of buses, but we were told the existing network, to keep it operational, we had to pay £50 million. And so this year, I think another 50 million, if not more. And on top of that, the taxpayer pays also for putting the infrastructure in, Now, why should a taxpayer We are the guardian of taxpayers' money. Why should we or the taxpayer pays the money for shareholders or private companies to make money? That's my first question. My second question is, the government last year, the previous government, the fare cap was £2. And once again, the taxpayer was subsidizing that fare for private operators. Now, this government said £3. And I give you example how these people are taking money from taxpayer from by both hands. I mean, in National Express, and I think officers correct me, please, if I'm wrong, they raised the fare to £2.90. And that's National Express. And Stagecoach, £2.50. So you can see the difference between a dominant, there's no competition. So that's what I'm trying to say. That's my second point. Now, in the 2017 Bus Act, the local authorities are banned. Would you confirm that they are banned from that was a Tory act introduced by Tory government? I'm trying to say how they have pushed money and services and asset into pockets of their rich friends now and made it difficult for local authorities to take back the control, because as you know, many times you pointed out, because the fares, the frequency, the timetable, we don't control it, it's the operators. Now, sir, the 2017 Act, as I was explaining, bans the local authority to own a municipal buses. Is that right? And we can purchase the company, but we cannot establish it right out ourselves as a local authority, which was so unfair. That was to protect the private companies. In London, we have one of the best systems, which is franchising. So my argument is that in 1979 or 84, when the buses were deregulated, if it was good for deregulation was good, why didn't they do it in London? And yet I'm still not happy with franchising, because in London, the operators are still involved and it costs us £100 million. So where do you stand all on this? Isn't it? It seems we are on our knees, and it seems the whole 14 years is being to push, as I said, push assets and money and services into pocket of their rich friends. So what are you going to do about it?
Thank you, Councillor Akhtar, for some very well made and clear points there. So I'm very pleased that, supported by all the council leaders, we've had approval to progress the route to franchising, and we get there because we've had to go through a very rigorous process, more rigorous than in my view is necessary, and that has included using independent advisors to demonstrate that franchising offers value for money, which is very, very important, as we're using undeployed public resources, not just now for the long term. And we're currently going through a public consultation process, and that's very, very important. And once we have, if we are able, with using all the evidence and appropriate protocols and procedures, we progress to franchising, we can then address and remedy some of the fault lines in our current system by designing a system of public transport here in the bus network that works for everyone. And currently, you're quite right, Councillor Akhtar, when the current private sector operator decides that routes are no longer viable, it cuts them without redress, without consultation, to suit its own financial benchmarks. And I was just struck during my campaign about not just how important effective bus service was to the people of West Midlands. People need to get to school, to college, to our high streets, to work, but also to businesses themselves. And I remember meeting the Chamber of Commerce in Solihull, and I asked members of the Chamber of Commerce what I could do, give my responsibilities to make the biggest difference to those businesses in Solihull. And they said, sort out the bus system, because there are jobs in Solihull Town Centre, at JLR, at the airport, that young people from the three poorest wards in Solihull, Chelmsley Wood, Smithswood and Kingslands cannot get to those jobs because the shift patterns that are required of them aren't aligned with the regularity of the bus services. So the difference we're going to make is having a bus service that works for everyone, so everyone in this region to get where they need to at the lowest possible price. And if we do that, we'll be creating more jobs, we'll be improving social mobility and growing our regional economy. And on the bus fare increases, as you referred to, I'm not in the position that Andy Burnham is under a franchise system to keep the bus fares as low as £2. But where we are able to control fares, particularly on weekly and monthly passes, we've done so. So whilst a daily fare or a single fare is £3, a weekly ticket or pass in this region is only £18 and a monthly pass £54, meaning that if you use the buses regularly, every day or multiple times a day, you still get better value from the bus network in this region than you do in any other region in the country. Thank you, Councillor Akhtar.
Yeah, can I come back quickly to this point?
One quick comment, because I've got a couple of councillors, your colleagues, waiting to speak.
Yes, thank you very much for introducing free services during Christmas period. It was well used, and so wouldn't it be better, because we all believe transport is an integral part of successful economy, if we free the buses altogether?
So very briefly, Councillor Akhtar, I'm pleased with what you've said about the free buses we offered during the week in December, New Year's Day. It attracted several 100,000 more journeys, demonstrating to everyone in this region that when buses are accessible, they're in demand, and we'll work in the future to ensure that fares are as low as possible, but we also use the resources we have to incentivise the use of the buses, encourage the use of our high streets, help people connect with their friends and communities, and importantly, remove congestion from our roads and improving the environment at the same time. Thank you very much.
I've got Councillor Bateman and then Councillor Locke.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, I'm really keen on just following up on some issues that's really current issues. I know that the future is very important to us. It's also very much built on the past. But I'd like just to kind of ask you a question on the transport sector before it disappears, about today, as we sit around the table today. I've always been in favour of the development of the metro, and I'm certainly in development of the rail network and the bus network. Hence, I think that's why Wolverhampton sent me here. But I come to say to you, whilst you were talking before about the importance of us getting our act together for the benefit of the economy as a whole, we've got gaps in our network where we have spent money, like the extension from Wolverhampton to the railway station, that arrived late, many months late, that has affected the connectivity. We've spent around £150 million on that transport interchange between heavy rail, bus station, and the new metro. It's incomplete. We've spent money on a cycle route and cycles, and a cycle shed of state of the art. It's been up there now unused for a long period. I'm going to say a year, but it might be slightly shorter. But nevertheless, it's there. An activity for nothing but ASB behaviour, completed but unused because of development, because the partnership that came together forgot about who was going to be in charge at the end of it and who was going to open and close it, as I understand. But it's there. What help can you offer in relation to that? And we've got the stairs at the at the new Wolverhampton railway station, highly developed up to here, but acting as a barrier for people from the Heathtown Road and the like, because Network Rail and the West Midlands trains have yet to sort out what's going to happen. And that's acting as a development, as a barrier for people who wish to connect. So the local economy is suffering. The criticism is extraordinary. The inaction is unbelievable. And I want to ask you if there's anything that you can do to kind of free those issues up and create the sort of transport interchange that everybody signed up to, and is yet having these gaps and these barriers still with us, and still no date as to when they will come free. So I think the hard part in many ways has been done, but it's incomplete. Incomplete. That affects you, that affects the economy, it affects everybody, and it affects connectivity across the city and further. And so the criticism is labelled at the local authority, at everybody, but the answers are not being achieved. So I'm looking for an answer really. And just before we go for that one, I do think that you need to be more upfront. Excuse me for being crude and perhaps a little rude, but I do think you need to be a little bit upfront with some of the issues that face us. You know, be a bit visible, not so much as on the good stuff that's going, and we're happy about that, but also being seen about trying to sort out some of the problems that's been left behind, because it don't hold up much future when we ask our people to trust us to go on to build and bigger and more effective schemes, because they don't feel that we've dealt with the smaller ones, and that's a real impediment for the development of both of the West Midlands Combined Authority, the mayoral role, but more importantly for the everyday lives of people who see these holes and them not being filled quick enough or effectively enough. So that's my question for this month.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. So, like you, I totally agree that we need a transport system in this region that's properly integrated. It's connecting railroad, metro, and those that want to walk and cycle across the region. That's really, really important. Look, I inherited a situation where I think ambition or hope or had overreached the reality of delivery, and I sought to address that by, with advice from officers, reprogramming our capital plans, because, like you, I agree that what brings politics and disrepute is when promises are made and announced, but delivery is slow or delayed or doesn't take place. And that is something we've sought to address by the review of what delivery projects here, but also reprioritise what is in delivery to ensure we deliver on those schemes, although many of them were delivered a lot later than been previously announced. And I want to give you and others the commitment that in the future, no projects will be announced without the appropriate caveats around the funding and where they are in terms of business case development, because too obviously in the past, projects were announced when the funding wasn't always secured, and in many cases where business cases haven't been proven, and that is misleading, and it's been misrepresentation, and it's raised expectation when they shouldn't have been there. But in terms of specific projects like the one you mentioned, I have a pivotal role using the convening role as mayor, working with other organisations, agencies, and quangos. And I use Wolverhampton Station a lot. I'm using it again the weekend for a football match, the Molyneux. If if you, working with your leader and others at the council, want to get in touch, talk about some of the specifics you've mentioned, particularly the delay or slowness of response of Network Rail or other organisations, we can speak to them and ask them to address those issues and ensure that they're on their plans of action. But thank you for raising it with me. I was not aware of the specific issues around that station, but I'm very, very happy to work with you and the council and the councillors at Wolverhampton to address and progress the issues you've raised.
Councillor Burlock.
It's very, very minute because I've been on the subject for some time. I know people use public transport, especially buses, for getting the children to school, going to work and shopping and everything. But also many, many people use them to go to the hospital, the doctors. And like has been previously said, sometimes I think, the operators have cherry-picked services. If they're not, really worth it, they take them off, and people are really struggling to get to the hospital and everything, and may waited months and months for appointments for important at the hospital. So I think I do look forward to franchising, but and look at all services for people far out in the countryside as well, so they get a fair crack of the whip.
Thank you, Mary. I look forward to working with you, and delivering to you and your ward the services that the people you represent deserve. Thank you.
Online we have Councillor Waters and then Councillor Hyatt. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Everywhere else in the West Midlands has been mentioned, but nothing's been mentioned for Walsall. Can the Mayor tell us what he's planned for Walsall transport-wise, other than the franchising? I know we're getting Willinghall Station and Darlaston Station, but my area, Aldridge Brownells, is not receiving anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I'm really pleased that Walsall as a borough has benefited from combined authority support. And if you just excuse me, there's just a table in my pack that I will refer to, which identifies the sums of which each local authority has benefited from resources. We'll get that. We'll get good. Thank you very much. So Walsall, during the life of the combined authority, as a borough, has received around £416 million worth of support, £71 million on economy and skills, £145 million on housing and regeneration, and almost £200 million on transport and highways. Across the West Midlands more broadly, there's been a further £600 million which has been spent on other economic support activities of which Walsall would have benefited. So Walsall as a borough has benefited from this organisation. 4 particular projects you haven't mentioned that I want to mention, and that's £5.5 million going into the sprint on the A34, local road enhancements between Walsall and Wolverhampton worth about £8 million. Walsall has secured almost £38 million from the Black Country Land and Property Fund, and has received investment zone grant of £2.4 million. I visited Walsall recently and a number of the town centre sites, and I'm looking forward to working with the leader of Wolverhampton and indeed your chief executive to look at ways in which we can help deliver funds to Walsall to help its much needed regeneration. I am very pleased that you mentioned the 2 new train stations that will be opening in Walsall next year at Darlaston and Willenhall, which will help connect people in those places to Walsall and across the Black Country. I will come back specifically to what you mentioned about Aldridge. Aldridge Station remains in the programme for redevelopment. It has to go through a business case, a very important caveat that was previously not given the significance or attention that it merited. But it is a programme that's supported, or a project supported by myself and the Combined Authority. But in order for Aldridge Station to attract the investment that the people of Aldridge and the MP would like, that project and that investment, like every single other investment delivered by the Combined Authority, needs to demonstrate that it's value for money and that it meets the requirements of business case, not just a business case supported by the Combined Authority, but by the Department for Transport too. And once we've made further progress with the technical analysis that needs to support the business case, you and other members, elected members of Walsall and your MP will be the first to know about the results of that and what it means for the plans or otherwise to develop Aldridge Station and a line running between Aldridge and Walsall Town Centre. Thank you very much.
Okay, I just wanted to come in on a couple of things before I call Councillor Hyatt. I think you might have misspoken when you said you wanted to speak to the leader of Wolverhampton about Walsall funding. I think you probably meant the leader of Walsall.
Thank you for that correction.
Okay, and here's a question from me. Aldridge Station, let's not go back into the funding because we disagree on that one, but why Aldridge to Walsall? Why not Aldridge to Birmingham via Sutton Park to support the development of the sustainable urban extension in Langley, which will need good public transport links? Why not adjoin by Castle Bromwich and open a station at Castle Bromwich also, which is in the Castle Mayoral area technically, reopen that line and so rather than going from Aldridge to Walsall and from Walsall then to Birmingham, just direct Aldridge to Birmingham city centre via the Sutton Park line, reopening railway station and work towards a strategic business case based on that basis, which, as I say, will connect with new housing, new economic growth, new regeneration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huxtable. I would welcome you writing in regard to that proposition of yours. It's the first time I've heard it, or that proposition, but to be very, very clear, it's a very different proposition to the scheme and the project that was placed in front of me when I was elected. So please feel free to write in with your proposals, and we will take it through the necessary authorities to look at its viability and any case of delivery.
Just one correction again, if you excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I did mention this at length at the board meeting, which you chaired in July, and the minutes of that board meeting will reflect that. And I think Councillor Adrian Andrew also spoke to me regarding that and the need to look at that particular aspect as well. But I'm more than happy, as per your suggestion, to put it actually on paper.
I think that would be very well. I was at that board meeting and I was listening to you, but I think rather than raise it as a comment, I think if you wish to see it progressed or working with Councillor Andrew into a future transport delivery plan, it needs to come to me via more formal channels. Thank you.
Councillor Hyatt, who's also online.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address you via Teams as well. It's very much appreciated. With regard to the bike shed by the station, that's an example where project management didn't start at the beginning and go all the way through to the end of the project, and we're still waiting for delivery for the Combined Authority to be able to provide a means of booking a space and providing access to the bike shed at the moment. So hopefully, I'm sure we'd be able to fill you in on that one. The question, though, that I really want to ask concerns the integrated settlement, where I'm really hoping that it's not going to reflect promises, made but not actually delivered. Because when you look at the active travel budget, it says to be confirmed, to be confirmed. And those of us who know that we need a network of cycle lanes, not just individual cycle lanes that start where the traffic is busy and end where the traffic is busy. So, you don't really want to use them because it doesn't seem very safe just to have a one cycle lane. This project needs to progress. We do need a network of cycle lanes. We were so chuffed to hear that, the announcement from the Labour government to invest in active travel correctly, to give us a network that we can actually use. And then we see on the integrated settlement, active transport to be confirmed. Please, can you give us an idea of your commitment to active travel? And please, can you give us an idea of what sort of funding we can expect?
Thank you. I am absolutely committed to active travel, and that's why hopefully you've seen today that my new active travel commissioner started work today and is starting induction today in the office with the road safety commissioner too. I'm keen to continue to ensure that we have a level of access to budgets to support active travel in line with what we've achieved before. There are two facets to the conversations going forward around active travel. One is getting final agreement from the government on the sums that were made available through the integrated settlement. And then a large part of the integrated settlement or single settlement is actually working through plans developed by local authorities, both through their transport budgets and wider growth budgets. And the team here will be working with local authorities to ensure that the budgets made available both through the integrated settlement, future transport funds, protect and enhance the sums allocated to active travel in a way that meets my ambitions, but hopefully will meet the ambitions that you have to, Councillor Hyde.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Hyde?
No, I need to say thank you very much for that reassurance. I look forward to seeing a future when it will be easy to use any form of transport. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier, because I've been listening very closely, as you'd expect, Mr. Mayor, about the bus fare that was raised by Councillor Akbar. And you said that because we didn't have a franchise at the moment, we were, unlike the Mayor of Greater Manchester, unable to keep it at the £2 level. My understanding is mayors of other mayoral combined authorities who don't have a bus franchise actually put in local policies to keep the bus fare at £2. Is that correct?
Some other mayors on a short-term basis decided to use some of the transport funding capacity they had to do that. I do not know what their budget positions are or what their financial positions are regarding the buses. I certainly know that many of them aren't spending the subsidy that we have to do to keep our network funding viable. We made choices to protect our network and acknowledge the fact that my priority within the financial envelope that we have available was to ensure that we continue with the highest and very good value weekly passes and monthly passes. And that's the decision that we made here. I do not know what the financial position or envelope is of other mayors, but certainly they made different choices here on a short-term basis. My priority is securing the stability of the network here to ensure as we don't lose bus routes or networks or losses to the timetable, and we ensure that bus users get the best value for money from the bus network across the West Midlands.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And talking about that financial envelope, will we be able to continue to fund the local policy concessions for children, accessible buses, and metro and rail service mainly through that's added on to the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme beyond March 2026 at existing levels.
It's a very good and a very pertinent question. I set out very clearly my plans and priorities around ensuring that as a mayor across the key programmes, whether it's homes, the economy, jobs or transport. Transport is about journeys for everyone, and I want the transport network that is accessible to everyone across the West Midlands. And I will be doing everything to ensure those services and that funding that you've referred to remains in place for the duration of my current mayoral term.
Councillor Bateman.
Just a question for you, Chair.
I'll answer the questions today.
On the basis that do we have to declare an interest if we have got a pensioners pass that relates to it? Because we seem to, if we're going to go into it in detail, I think I'd like some advice as to whether or not I have to declare
Good job we have the Director of Law and Governance in our mix. Director.
I would say not that one.
Right, we have a legal ruling not.
You don't look old enough for anything. Be safe.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the transport journeys for everyone section of this that anyone in this room or online would like to raise? Speak now or forever hold your peace until the next. Councillor Akhtar.
One of my question, I wouldn't expect Mayor to tell me, but I asked a question about banning of municipal buses under 2017 Act. Can the officers answer that question, please?
University challenge.
No, not over the microphone, apparently. Do you want to try, Linda? It's the same answer.
So my understanding is that this correct, that we are not allowed to own a municipal bus. Yes.
Thank you.
But on the same token, we are able to go through the franchising process because of the Bus Act of 2017.
Yes.
Correct?
Oh, but Chair, I can't let that get away with it because 2017 Act made it so impossible and difficult that millions of pounds were spent by the taxpayer in Manchester.
Right, I'm moving on. Councillor Bateman wanted to come back in.
Just a very quick one, Mr. Mayor. Would you support members of this committee getting information and statistics that relate to the metro and rail transport as often perhaps as you get? Because, you know, information is really the key for all of us making a good fist of the job that we do. I find myself struggling like mad to get the information. And I just think in a past life, perhaps where I was sitting, where you were sitting, and I know things have changed, but life was made that much easier because the statistics came without you having to chase them. And if ever I wish for any part of my past life, it's the fact that I got those statistics that relate to the job that we all do on the table. And that's all.
Okay, so a very good point, Councillor Bateman. So I suggest that you speak to the chair and we put forward a list of information data requirements in accordance with what we think would be helpful, and we will ensure that we can collate that information and share it with you as regularly as frequently as you require. Thank you.
I'm just going to say, I think Councillor Bateman is proposing a free transfer from the main ONS committee to the Transport Delivery ONS committee there, because I believe we do get that information at TDOSC, as Councillor Locke is affirming.
Yes.
So
it's on the website
yes,
as well.
and of course, this is a plug for the member engagement groups and able to look at things in a far more detailed basis on transport mode as well. And perhaps you might want to speak to Councillor Alden, who does a fantastic job at chairing the rail, metro and sprint member engagement group of TDOSC. So any other questions on any other questions on the transport section? No, in which case I'm going to move on to jobs for everyone. And I think Councillor Layton, we haven't heard from you for some time, which is never good not hearing from you. So apprenticeship guarantee. Number 8.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for recognising my contributions to these meetings. Yeah, so I mean, and you touched on this really in your opening, Richard, and again further on, your apprenticeship guarantee for young people in the region, and we absolutely recognise the importance of that, and good quality apprenticeships. In terms of the budget, though, are there currently streams of funding that is sufficient for you to be able to meet that pledge? And are you having to work within the private sector in order to bring additional financing for this? So it's more of a partnership, collaborative approach.
Thank you, Kathy. Just to say a couple of things, I'm very pleased with the level of funding we've got to the combined authority and the progress we've made on training, upskilling our young people. Since May, 40,000 young people, young adults have been access to training courses and employment support in this region, helping some of the youngest people in the most deprived parts of this region. Indeed, last week I went to the Hippodrome to meet 2 young apprentices that are working on the current pantomime production, Peter Pan, who access those apprenticeships through attending boot camps at Solihull College, and it's fantastic to see the difference that our courses can make. And indeed, when I was recently on the film set of Peaky Blinders, I met 2 young makeup artists who themselves trained at colleges in this region, and supported by funding. So the frustration I have is that currently, as Mayor with responsibility largely for adult skills post-19, it still only represents about 10% of the skills money spent in this region. And like other mayors, we would like to have more resources working with businesses, so we align the courses we run in our colleges across this region with more closely with the needs of businesses. And we have, as I said, twice as many young people out of work than national average, and it is blighting the lives of too many of our young people. So the issue and the focus on skills and education training is absolutely fabric to this. And I'm seeking to use every pound we've got in this region to invest in adult skills and education the best way we can, working with our council leaders and with our businesses. And that's why I developed my West Midlands Youth Plan, and that's why the focus on that plan is so important. It's the first time we've had a plan like that in this region. And what that plan is about, so it's simply, we need to do more for young people in this region than give them access to courses. We need the jobs for them to go to. So the youth plan is about creating up to 20,000 new training, placement and apprenticeship opportunities for our young people. And I'm really pleased that in excess of 5,000 of those have been committed by businesses already, and we're doing more to attract those. And I've got meetings over the next few weeks with some chief executives and managing directors of very large public sector organisations around this region that want to help support that plan. So we're using the resources we have here, which include the skills budget of £140 million, the youth guarantee sums for a pathfinder for government of £5 million, and parts of the UK SPS funding around £22 million to support this agenda. But you're absolutely right, Kathy. The role of the private sector, primarily in businesses, is fabric to this. And whilst we're not drawing on their funding currently, we are looking to far better align the skills we're developing and that are accessible to our young people with the skills that our businesses need. So the Hippodrome example is a fantastic example where the creative director at the Hippodrome is working hand in hand with our colleges to help shape courses that will help train our young people in the skills places like the Hippodrome need. So we're making progress. There's lots more to do, and I'm sure all of you will agree that we need to continue to invest in our future and in our young people. Thank you.
Of course, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, and really welcome that those commitments, Mayor. I think just the other one thing I would want to explore a bit further, not necessarily for now, but certainly explore as we move forward on this plan, is the geographical spread. You know, coming from a borough where skills are particularly low across the whole of the adult population. You know, I'd want to explore that we have a fair geographical spread and to understand the kind of opportunities that that people are having in some of the outer lying boroughs in the region.
Thank you, Kathy. And I was delighted that one of those apprentices that I met at the Hippodrome indeed comes from the Black Country and very close to the ward that you represent. So you're absolutely right. The part of the region that you live in and represent, the Black Country, has suffered ever since we deindustrialised almost 50 years ago, and too many young people in that part of the region have been left behind and overlooked for too long. And we all need to ensure that when we create those jobs I refer to through our investment zones, whether the Green Innovation Corridor in Wolverhampton, whether the Knowledge Quarter in the centre of Birmingham, or Green Power Park and the site of for a Giga factory in Coventry, those jobs and the skills supporting them are available to all of our young people. And I'm particularly pleased that in the early autumn, after the general election, a delegation from Number 10 visited the Black Country with me to visit a skills hub and a further education college to look at the skills we're investing in our young people. And it was very clear to all of us on that visit that we need to do a lot more to invest in skills in sectors like construction and engineering and logistics. And I'm just going to say a bit more about this to just demonstrate that we need to address this issue for the ecosystem as a whole. We're developing a regional growth plan here, and that growth plan needs to focus on those sectors that will help drive our competitiveness regionally and grow our economy and bridge that productivity gap. So there will be a focus on advanced manufacturing, life science, digital and tech. But I'm really clear to the civil servants here and to the government that it will need also to recognise the importance of those foundation industries like engineering, construction, health and social care that are often the best routes in to work for many of our young people across the region. So we need to just grow our economy by attracting those high level skills, but I also want to ensure our growth plan recognises the importance of those foundation industries and particularly the routes into work in this sector through apprenticeships and other training opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I believe Councillor Burrow wants to ask you a question about adult skills fund.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to hear that focus is not on just on the high level skills. It's clear level 2 and level 3 skills are going to be key to West Midlands. We've got some wonderful opportunities, but we don't have the workers and the workers with the right skills. I'm sure we have the workers. We need to skill them up. Can you just reassure me that the Adult Skills Fund hasn't been cut by the government? Somebody told me it had, and I couldn't see that in the numbers. Can you just reassure me that the amount of money that we thought we were going to get is still the amount of money, hasn't gone down year on year?
So I'm not aware currently of any cuts being made. There are some figures that we're due still to receive from government, particularly around boot camps, which we're waiting for clarity on. But like all of us, the commitment to our young people and their skills is really fabric to this region. And for all of you and the wards you represent, I would just encourage you to engage with your councils and your local colleges and your young people and to direct them to the courses and support we provide here. And I would like But the two things I'd like to say is that we do have under the integrated settlement a possibility to redirect up to 10% of our funds across. There are 5 pillars for investment, to redirect 10% of those funds, and I will be discussing with leaders and councils the extent to which we want to focus some additional spending onto skills investment in young people. Like you, Councillor Burrow, the businesses that I speak to, are desperately keen to recruit young people into some of the industries we've referred to, where in most cases we have an ageing workforce too. And if we want to build more homes, we need the skills to deliver them. One of the most pleasing things that I've developed in with some of the officers is the Path to Apprenticeship programme that is helping young people, particularly those that have left school with little no qualifications and often been out of work since they left school. Sadly, that I pick up responsibility for the young people, they're 19, not 16. But that programme, which is going down to deliver £13 million of investment over the next 4 years, will help young people that have been out of work, often left school with no qualifications, get access to a training opportunity, an interview, and the possibility of an apprenticeship. And the first cohort on that programme that I met had all got apprenticeships in the construction industry. We're helping businesses, we're helping to grow our economy, and we're helping young people succeed in life.
I'm going to call in Councillor Kettle and then Councillor Tennant. Councillor Kettle.
If I may, the field needed for the gigafactory, are they being anticipated and planned for?
Very, very good question. So we have, I'm really pleased, Coventry City Council produced a fantastic business case supporting the work they want to do there. And they've levered in 2 chunks of funding currently. One is a large chunk for sort of connectivity of energy, which is important for attracting investors. And then there's a further sum of money, I think between £2 and £3 million, which is there to support the supply chain in developing and access the skills they need to support that facility. But in the future, be in no doubt at all, we're going to have to focus and refocus our investment in skills to supporting those jobs that we want to create.
May I come back to this appointing?
Of course, Councillor Kettle.
How are these new skills being identified?
Those are being identified through consultation with businesses, largely, and an understanding of, if not an understanding of what's required to work in those sectors, and also the extent to which there are people in the workforce currently that have the core skills that allow them to upskill to do those jobs. So there's various elements of it, and of course what we're seeking to do is build resilience into our workforce rather than try and second guess to a micro level every skill that future business might need.
Thank you.
Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Chair. Linking back to my previous question actually about using our money efficiently, when we are giving people money, whether that be to housing associations to build more houses or buying in contracts, are we including in that a requirement that they take on apprenticeships and that kind of social responsibility element that allows our money to go even further?
Thank you, Councillor Tennant. I'm just going to come ask Laura, the Chief Executive, to talk about the issues of procurement in a bit more detail about the approach here, because I obviously didn't get involved in those decisions. But to be clear, when we are investing businesses and in supporting investment development with the housing associations and others, I haven't sort of released money as part of my new programmes, but going forward, there is a recognition that we expect those businesses to employ local people, to invest in them and support them. And indeed, only I think the week before last, I visited a recent development and met a young apprentice that we supported on that project. And I think it's been on social media, but we've helped him transform a life where he actually said openly that he may have ended up in prison to a situation where he got a job on that development and is now training to be a plumber on that site. And it would have been a very even more memorable visit if I hadn't been stranded in the construction lift between the 16th and 17th floor coming down and had to extricate myself through the emergency ladder.
I'm certainly supporting plumbers because as politicians we don't like leaks.
But can I just come back to the point? I just wonder whether Laura, my chief executive, might just say something about the broader approach to procurement.
Yes, of course, and obviously colleagues are here as well. It's not the same for every size contract, obviously. But certainly for our large size contracts, absolutely there's social value into those contracts. And probably the biggest contract being Metro, which we've discussed here today, there absolutely were targets for things like apprentices, where they came from, using local labour, etc. So yes, we absolutely do.
Right, are there any other questions on this particular section? Councillor
Yes, thank you. So the role you played getting the Gigafactory in Coventry is a welcome news. It's a tremendous news. And I agree with you. Skills and R&D and physical infrastructure, education, health, they are the key to economic growth. But slightly, I'm surprised at my friends, some of my colleagues here. I mean, all this, the elephant in the room is the funding, so, isn't it? So for education, for R&D, for physical infrastructure, it's the funding. And once again, there's a massive inequality and divide in our country. People who have, for the last so many years, hoarded the wealth, the power, the money, and those who just about managed. And if every time we talk about raising taxes, and especially for those people who have broader shoulders, we have opposition from the opposition parties, then how are we going to fund all this? Or all this, what they are asking us to do, or what you are saying to them that, yes, these are the key to economic growth for the skills are concerned, and I agree with you.
Thank you, Councillor Akhtar. We have to live within our means. We have to spend what we have very wisely, and we need to focus it on the right things to grow our economy and offer opportunities for everyone. And as we touched on before, I'm very pleased that the progress we're making our investment zones across the region. And it's just not my responsibility, but the responsibility of every politician in this region to, as much as we can, to help attract the investment that we need, and we're targeting 5 billion across the three of them, and that we deliver not just the growth but the jobs that we're seeking to attract. And the commitments we're making to those investment zones is significant. And we talked about supporting skills on those sites. Well, the funding next year to support the supply chain is £3 million. We've earmarked 12.5 million going forward to focus on that investment and supporting those skills. So my only issue is the impatience we all have to make that progress as soon as we can. Thank you.
Would anyone like to raise an issue on this section? I can't see anyone. If I could turn then, because I think we've asked all of the questions that we thought of beforehand. In terms of your role as chair of the West Midlands Rail Executive, and one of the most important infrastructure schemes, I think, for the West Midlands as a whole, and also beyond, is the Midlands Rail Hub. The first tranche of funding for which has been spent on producing a strategic outline business case, if I'm correct. Given the importance of infrastructure, as we've all mentioned today, given that there seems to be funding for East West Rail, seems to be funding for the tunnelling between Old Oak Common and Euston, and one would envisage that would mean funding for Euston itself. Given funding for the Trans-Pennine Railway, Given the quote investment-led funding for Greater Manchester for Clean Air Zone, which enabled the Mayor of Greater Manchester not to impose any charges on motorists within their Clean Air Zone because it was investment-led. Where are we in terms of getting funding from the government in terms of the Midlands Rail Hub? And what would you like to see in particular achieved with the Midlands Rail Hub? What would be your priorities within that Midlands Rail Hub for fast tracking, if you excuse the pun?
So we are waiting and working with the government and its agencies on a submission which will be part of the spending review. It's interesting you refer to lots of other schemes. They all require firm funding commitments, and we're working on those sets of projects initiatives. I haven't got a briefing in front of me on all of the schemes that are currently being developed as part of the, and recognise it's the Midlands Rail Hub, not the West Midlands Rail Hub, but connectivity, to be clear, across this region is important, particularly east-west routes that are lacking at the moment and too slow. And there's important connectivity between parts of the south-east of the region and east of the region. What I am able to update you on is in the run up to Christmas, I met with the Secretary of State and Department of Transport officials, talking about some of our needs across this region, and particularly capacity issues on the West Coast Main Line and the M6, and the importance to this region, both strategically in terms of connectivity with the more recent Arab proposal around the Midlands, the Midlands Northwest Rail Link. But at this stage, in terms of specifics, I haven't got any to share with you. There have been private conversations with ministers around our regional priorities, and those are being worked through and will be announced in the spending review. But we are very clear about the need and the importance of investing in transport in this region, investing in our transport infrastructure, investing in a new approach to our railways, including the public ownership of our railway system through Great British Railways, and mayors having a greater say on rail connectivity within their regions. It's fabric to the government's devolution plans. And again, I think when we meet again, we'll have a greater clarity from the government about the sums that are available through the Midlands Rail Hub. We need an announcement from this government, not the last one around that, because to Frank, previous announcements stand up to little scrutiny because there was very little money or financial commitment behind them, and those numbers were never put into a spending review or its equivalent. So work is in progress. You are obviously quite expert, Councillor Huxtable, in some of the regional priorities around transport. Those have remained largely in situ, but we'll be discussing not just future funding, but the prioritisation of some of those investments that are important to the West Midlands. And my current priorities are rail connectivity that will improve our economy and assist the mobility of our people and help people across this region access the jobs and the opportunities that I want to create for them.
Thank you for that commitment, Mr. Mayor. If I could put forward some, because to add to one local scheme we've already discussed today, and that is the reopening of the Camp Hill line currently under construction. The reopening of the middle platforms at Kings Norton would assist the scheme considerably. The additional platform 4 at Snow Hill would also be very beneficial, and the complete reconfiguration of Birmingham Moor Street, and perhaps also trying to get electrification along the Snow Hill lines, would all assist in terms of both passenger capacity but also infrastructure capacity. So I would suggest that you consider all those which were key fundamental parts of the Midlands Rail Hub, but also look at what better use can be allocated, for want of a better word, to the new High Speed 2 station at Curzon Street, and any surplus capacity there might be in terms of those east-west connections, particularly given the location of Curzon Street out towards the East Midlands in particular, and to work, as I'm sure you will do, with Great British Railway in terms of the ambitions we have as the West Midlands region as part of, as you say, the entire Midlands Rail Hub.
Thank you, Councillor Huxtable. I understand that those projects that you've outlined are on the list of priorities here, and I'm as hopeful as you are that the Huxtable plan will be delivered by the government as part of its spending review. Thank you.
I like the sound of that Huxtable plan. I might use that. Okay. Councillor Locke, given that your ward is alongside the Camp Hill lines and the new station at Pineapple Road,
and it was previously part of your old. Oh, sorry, it was previously part of your old ward as well, but now you've moved on, but into another ward. But I know people are looking forward to the Camp Hill line opening, you know, because. You know, it was supposed to open in 2022, then it got delayed. It's hoping that it opens sometime the end of this year, and it will be really successful. And if the changes and things that Councillor Huxtable mentioned can be thought of in, not like today, but in the near future, it would all help to extend it further and wider.
Thank you, Councillor Locke. That line will open large parts of South Birmingham and its rail network, relieve congestion on roads, and increase the use of transport. And I'm hoping we can integrate a bus network with the rail stations there and help that part of Birmingham, your ward, Pineapple Road, Moseley and Kingsley get in and around this region a lot more quickly in the future. Thank you.
I think Councillor Bowen has a question. Yes, I've noticed that Councillor Fulton has actually on screen. She and I have a shared interest in pilot schemes for getting domestic electricity into EVs when you don't have parking space outside your house, typically terraces. We just wanted to check there is some money in the budget for more pilot schemes for this in this proposed budget for 25-26. It shouldn't be a huge amount of money, but that there will be some money. Yeah. Local authorities can come to you.
There is, and I believe I don't have the figures completely at hand, but
Mr. Mayor, could you use your microphone?
Sorry, I'll just see whether I've got some figures at hand. But we've got a really ambitious plan for rolling out EV charging stations across the region, and I think what we probably on that one we could do, Councillor Burrow, is come back to you, if you like, with a written response precisely about those numbers and locations.
That would be great. This is specifically about getting domestic electricity into cars, not about public charging stations, which tend to be a lot more expensive. I can see Councillor Baton nodding her head as well. Clearly, Dudley are interested as well.
Okay, so.
But you can come back, that's fine.
No, I think there are obviously some issues around supporting domestic, and those grants are available. But just across this region, so I've got some figures now. That we have got a budget of £17 million for next year, and that is a rollout of ultra rapid charging stations adjacent to our highways. Our councils are our highways authorities, so I think one thing I would seek to emphasise is working in tandem with our local authorities. We should be locating those stations at the most appropriate and accessible places for people across this region.
Councillor Bateman and then Councillor Akhtar.
One of those deadly issues about making public speeches when you're a director of another organisation on the airport. Representing Wolverhampton, so I'd like to declare that as an interest. But I think the importance of the airport, in line with what we're talking about the Midland Hub taking place, I would urge you to make some time available and speak directly to the airport about your plans and proposals and the way in which you can enhance things. I'm sure you're doing it, but I would like to underline the importance of that, because of the integration is huge. And talking about integration, the one thing that never gets spoken about, and I noticed it again here today, is the role that the coach plays in all of this. We talk about buses and the importance of obviously, and we talk about rail and the importance that rail brings to us in terms of connectivity. But we, at our peril, ignore coaches, which we do often, especially when we build in stuff like new bus stations and the like. The impact and the importance of connectivity to the region, within the region, and thinking about what the coach can do to enhance our local connectivity. We miss it at our peril, because there will always be a role for coach, both in private and public integration. And I think I would like to hear from you how you're going to move forward when you're helping develop these big schemes, about how you can develop that particular mode of transport.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. So I am in regular conversation with the airport about our regional plans, and importantly with our regional businesses about the importance of the airport and that connectivity. So be rest assured, we're having those conversations, and obviously the interface of the airport with the HS2 station with a motorway network is fabric to the growth of the region, and obviously future developments near the airport around Arden Cross the fabric to our regional growth plans. So be rest assured on that. I would say from my position, I learn something every time I attend one of these meetings, and it's invaluable. But the issue of transport connectivity and the role of coaches is something I openly admit that I've not yet previously had raised with me or considered. But if we want this region to succeed, it needs to be accessible, and more accessible and more amenable to all forms of transport, and also sort of mass transport and mass transit. So I welcome your views on that, and hopefully we can, I'll talk to my team about considering them further. Thank you.
And before I come to calling Councillor Akhtar, of course, the terminus of the Birmingham East Side extension, done by your predecessor, is right outside Digbeth Coach Station. So to provide that integration you just talked about between rapid transit, mass rapid transit, and coaches. Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, you mentioned West Coast Main Line, and I agree with you. It is one of the main economic artery in our country. And so yet, as far as Avanti is concerned, it is one of the worst operators in our country. And they are not reliable, they are not affordable, and last government, they knew it was performing very badly, then still they gave the contract for 7 to 9 years. I think it was 7 years. I'm not sure, right? I'm looking for officers to confirm that. I think it was 7 years, and they gave that. So do you realize the type of the beast, the corruption beast we have in our country, and we're fighting against it? And sometimes I'll be honest with you and to my colleagues, I can't sleep at night. How can they do this to our country? One of the worst operators in our country, and they give a contract. So you said that you had a conversation with the transport secretary, and I know the transport knows Andy Burnham and his colleagues up there have written to transport secretary telling her that they are one of the worst operators. So can we do something like that?
So thank you, Councillor Akhtar. We, as Councillor Huxtable's was referred to our chair of regional rail board, and we received presentations and updates from the MDs or leading executives from each of the train companies and operators that operate through this region. And like you, in most cases, but not in all cases, disappointed and saddened by the performance data that I receive, and major concerns about the investment many of those companies, if not all of them, many of those companies made in their train drivers and their own resources. The challenges we face on our railways are debilitating growth and preventing this region succeeding, and they're playing a part in the growth challenge we have. And that's why I'm very, very pleased that the government will be nationalising our railways, creating Great British Railways, integrating our operators within a national transport system that will help ensure that our rail network works for everyone. And the sooner we make progress on that, the better, in my view. Thank you.
And Chair, I want to say to Mayor and bring it to your attention, sir, that once again, the elephant and bear line is not functioning at all. It's service 1 hour. Most of the time is coaches. It's the line between Nuneaton, Coventry, Kenilworth and Leamington. So can you please look into that?
I will ask the officers to look into that and will respond to you directly, Councillor Akhtar. Thank you.
Just to mention to Councillor Akhtar, of course, we did have a discussion on the elephant and bear line at the rail Meg. I chaired the Meg. But again, I refer that to Councillor Alden in terms of being the new chair of railway. Are there any other questions for the Mayor? If not, I will invite the Mayor to make some closing remarks. No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, no, thank you very much today. A very full, comprehensive set of questions. I welcome scrutiny and the challenges you raised today. I hope I've given the answers that you required, and where there are specific responses I've not been able to answer today, I'll ask the officers to come back to you directly. Thank you for all the work you do as public servants for this region, and I look forward to working with you to deliver for the people of West Midlands over the remaining term of mayoral office. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming. I'm very glad you welcome scrutiny, and given your commitment to judge you by the amount of new metro lines going to be constructed under you, new railway lines being reopened under you, new spring routes being opened under you. We look forward to tracking that progress as we go along through this mayoral term. Thank you very much.
It's don't be biased, Tim.